okay?
Yes, thank you. Are you?
Good. Yes, yeah. Thanks for speaking a little bit earlier. Just as things are piling up, and I just thought if we could speak a little bit earlier, it would help. So I appreciate that you've rushed a little bit when you've just finished work. So hopefully that's okay.
Oh, not a problem.
Okay then. Well, this is a bit weird because normally we'd be doing this face to face, but just given the, as I said, given the way things are going just now, it just doesn't look as if there's going to be an end to this, and I think we're probably about to move into tier 3 anytime soon.
I know.
So it's just a question of balance, really, isn't it? And hopefully helping you to at least get this, and we just have to try and do it slightly differently.
Yeah. Hopefully one day we'll be able to meet up though.
Yes, of course. But I mean, it's the thing is as well, Rachel, your background circumstances are relatively straightforward. But I guess the thing that I always value being able to talk to people about, when we speak face to face, it's just about recognizing the losses that are involved in adoption for everybody in what's called the adoption triangle.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's actually, you might find that getting information opens some of these doors for you. So what I would say at this stage is, if you've got anything at all that crops up, whether today, after today, when you get your records, whatever, please keep the communication open, because I don't have all the answers to this, but I've got a lot of experience in it, and I can maybe point you in the direction, because it does sometimes, not for everybody, and some people do this, take it in their stride. Other people find that it brings up things that maybe were already there a little bit, or that are a surprise, and it can be a little bit confusing. So do ask if there's anything at all at any stage that it would help you, even just to say out loud and bounce off me a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So shall we just say, have you got support with all of? Have you got somebody you're sharing this with as well? That was the other thing when I'm doing this at a distance.
Yeah, I've got massive support. I've got my wife. I've got my best friends that know about it. I've spoken to someone at work. She's a similar age to what my adopted mum would be.
Right.
So she's really supportive as well. So I have got a really good supportive network.
Close but tight, and different sort of relationships, but all your best relationships, really.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important because I guess my concern about adoption generally, and you might have found this, that in the bigger world, a lot of people just think it's all wonderful and it's so exciting, and they love the programs that you see in telly and all of the rest of it. But as you probably know, and I know, that's not what it's about. There can be rose-covered cottage aspects of it, but there can also be complications, and it's just at this stage, even though obviously you've said before you knew that you were adopted, you're still young, but you're mature enough to know your own mind and what you want to do.
Yeah.
But at this, it's almost like taking this as the beginning of a new stage, because believe me, Rachel, after we've had our conversation today, and then when you're waiting for your records to arrive, assuming that's what we decide that we're going to do, it will fill your head, it will make you think about things, it will take you all over the place, and it's allowing yourself to go through that process, because it brings back the very fact that you, as an adopted person, have got two sets of parents, full stop, and that can take your heart and head to all sorts of unknown places.
Yeah.
And I do think, sometimes people tell the world and regret it. I think there's a lot to be said for keeping it very tight with the people you trust the most until you're sure. I don't know if at this stage, I don't know if we've talked about it before, whether you're thinking about possibly tracing, or whether you just want your records. Have you got that far yet?
Well, I've always said that I was brought up amazingly, and I can't actually tell you the time that my parents told me I was adopted. It was kind of like I've always known.
Yeah.
They did it really well. And I've always, from my own back, thought, well, this woman who carried me inside her for 9 months and then decided I can't give this child the best life. I'm going to give her the best life by giving it to someone who desperately wants a child. How can you have anything against that person? And for me, it's
you feel sort of compassion more than anything else, really.
Yeah, and I just feel like if I met her and she wasn't on this pedestal that I've put her on for all my life, then I'd question my own thoughts and beliefs about things. So at the minute, I'm still in that view. However, obviously after going through this process, I don't know if my mind will change after that. But that is how I've always imagined this amazing woman.
Yeah, and what she is going to be, there might be bits of it that are amazing, but she's also going to be a normal woman with all her faults.
Yes, yeah. And we all have them.
That's right. But and obviously what you're going to be given is very much a capsule in time from 32 years ago. But we don't know what may have happened in her life. Things could have got better, things could have got worse. We just don't really know what's happened. So that's why I always say, even though it's taken 30 years to get here, it's still taking this as a new beginning and being open to not only what happened then and allowing yourself to absorb that, but also about what might have happened in the intervening years, and then it's whether or not, and it's almost like imagining anything you can imagine, because anything could have happened, good, bad, or otherwise, and then reaching a decision whether you want to push that door open a little bit further. But it is very much in stages, I think, and it's about doing yourself a favour, really, of taking as much time as you need to think about implications and what you're reading, what you're hearing, and, taking sort of advice from, your wife, your colleague, your friend, from myself, do that and hopefully make what seems to be the best decisions for you. But like any other decisions, hindsight will always tell you whether it's the right thing to do,
Yeah.
So can I just ask, how much do you know about your background, Rachel?
I was told, I've been, over the years, I think I've heard things and I might have mixed them up in my head a bit. I think that my biological mum had an elder daughter, but she wasn't married to her dad anymore. I think I remember that she'd had like a one night stand with a friend or something, and she wasn't able to look after me at that time.
That is broadly it, to be honest. That's one of my concerns was whether or not you would know about the older daughter, because that's something that can be tricky, because almost like, but I mean, the way I read it and the way you will read it, and I'll go through it a little bit with you first, but I mean, that is pretty much the situation. Her older daughter, was actually born in 1981.
Okay.
And her name was Emma.
Right.
But she was born of your birth mother Susan's marriage.
Okay.
So basically, your birth mum had been married, and basically her husband left her, and they were divorced in January 1986. And she was, to all intents and purposes, devastated by that, as you would be.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, the only information she gave about your birth father was his first name, Philip, and he was a friend who had supported her when her relationship with her husband broke down through a divorce. But it was actually a friendship, a platonic relationship that just, it doesn't actually say it was a one-night stand, but as often happens between consenting adults, and you're old enough to understand that obviously now too, that sometimes, you can seek the comfort of somebody that you really like, who's not necessarily like a romantic interest for you,
Yeah.
And that seems to have been exact what happened with Susan and Philip. And she'd known him for a couple of years, so that suggests that that they'd formed a relationship as friends after her husband left her.
Yeah.
And I think she was just conflicted because she didn't want him to know that she was pregnant, because it just wasn't what they'd intended. And she also felt that she couldn't resume the friendship as a result, because it would be like lying to a friend, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's she kind of lost the friendship. And I mean, I'm basically, because I've actually got the circumstances here. So basically, she had requested for adoption for you because she couldn't cope with a baby and a 7-year-old as a single parent. And it said, what I've written is that she was devastated when her marriage ended, and she felt that attempting to parent a second child would threaten the survival of her existing family when she was already struggling both emotionally and financially.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah, and you can't you? Yeah. And she was, she was fully involved in finding the right family for you, although she didn't meet your mum and dad, as far as we're aware. She was very clear that she wanted a loving, caring family, who would ideally give you a religious upbringing, who could recognise your potential and allow it to develop, but never push or pressurise you into achieving, and somebody who would love a child for itself.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of statements. So it's quite powerful stuff that she also really wanted you to be placed from hospital so that there was no delay to you in your care with the people that were going to be your parents, which is why you were only about 8 or 9 days old when you were placed for fostering originally with your mum and dad. That was quite common at that time, and that was partly when somebody had just given birth, because obviously all the emotions are there, and she made a very sensible decision, but your logic can be very much against your emotions and what you would ideally want to do, and I would imagine it wasn't what she ever anticipated was going to happen in her life, that she would even be considering placing a baby for adoption.
Well, I can, if you don't mind, I can tell you that my mum and dad were on the adoption list for quite a long time. They were told they could never have children, and they went on holiday. And on this is the story they've told me. On the way back, there was a little girl running around the airport, and her mum kept going, Rachel, come and sit down. And my dad said he had a dream that they had a baby, and then they came home from holiday, and the social worker that day had posted a note through the door saying there's a baby waiting for you at the hospital, and they went and picked me up the next day.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and you imagine, and this is the whole thing about, like adopted family as well. You imagine your mum and dad, if you were pregnant or I was pregnant, 9 months later a baby arrives, you've got all the time to prepare for it. But your mum and dad, they've been through all of the rigours of being approved as adoptive parents, and then you go from knowing that you're approved, wondering whether it'll ever happen, and then you've got a baby with a day's notice.
Yeah, and then my mum's friend was pregnant at the same time, so she brought a load of baby grows round, and she was pregnant with a girl as well, so my mum and dad got a lot of stuff from her.
Yeah, and obviously because they were that age, they had the support network where they've got friends with babies, and so they're able to get the sort of support that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you got Rachel then as well.
That's why I was called Rachel.
Gosh, it's amazing. And this is where all of this stuff will kind of piece together for you and fill. Some of it will, and and I know that you've lost your mum, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it will, some of it, you'll see some stuff about your mum and dad as well, and that, you will find that. Hold on just a minute. Yes. Hi, Rachel.
Hiya.
Sorry about that. I've got somebody in sitting tiles in the kitchen and he's just off. So, sorry about that. This is the thing when you're working at home, isn't it?
Oh, I know.
So listen, what I was going to ask you, do you know your birth name? You know the name that you were given?
I think it was Lucy.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
You were Lucy and your surname was Cummings.
Okay.
And you were born at 11:25 a.m.
Okay, I didn't know that bit.
I'll give you all this in writing. And you weighed 6 pounds 13 ounces, which is the same as my younger daughter, actually.
Oh, wow.
Who was born in 1987.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, the information I'm going to give you, Rachel, has got, I might have explained this to you, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. What you will get, and I'm guessing you'll want me to post this on to you so that you can actually see the documentation, but there's a sheet about yourself which has got your name, your birth name, date of birth, place, time, etc., baptism. And then there's one, now I won't go into all the detail, but there's information about your birth mother, your birth father, and then like the circumstances leading to your adoption, which is what I've just outlined, you know, about them being friends and her part in your, you know, in finding the right family for you.
Yeah.
So, I'll go over a little. Your birth mother was Susan Mary, and she was born in May 1959. Now,
yeah.
Go on.
No, yeah, 1959.
Yeah. Now, there's a physical description of her, and this is where that's one of the things that can sometimes push some buttons on you, because although I don't have a photograph or anything of her, just knowing, you know, like for example, she's 5'2", medium build. It says mouse hair, highlighted fair with fair skin and light blue-grey eyes. As you're reading that, and I won't go into all the detail, you will maybe identify some things that are like you and some things that aren't.
Probably the height, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where he's up to. But, you know, I won't read it all out to you, but her personality there is stubborn, caring, sensitive, emotional. She worked in schools and nurseries. She's run a playgroup, so all very much working with children and very young people. What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to be a makeup artist, and now I'm a production planner.
Production planner, what does that mean?
Well, our company makes cakes for Marks and Spencer's, so I get the orders, and then I basically tell people what to do, and then shout at them when they don't do it. So I start at 4:00 in the morning, and I finish at 1.
Right, gosh. That's funnily enough, just mentioning my daughter actually worked in fashion, but she was a developer, so like if people wanted it was particularly with bags and things like that. So she's actually just been made redundant, but
oh, no.
you know, bags where she had to research the fabrics and the trims, the buttons and all of that, and actually put the piece together from the designer's work.
Oh, wow.
So she works with people like Ted Baker and Superdry and things like that. That's what she did. But it sounds like it's a similar sort of industry, isn't it?
Yeah. It's there's a lot of things that people don't realise that go into cakes.
Oh yeah, well I see things very differently now, because she would go in and even sometimes you see some of the things that they'd designed and said, this has not been made to my specification. You know? And it's quite interesting, because you forget that every single detail on a coat, the stitching or the buttons, or everything needs to be in the right place for the process to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a wee aside. So I just got to, and the other thing, this is sometimes where there could be her interests and hobbies. She was into drawing, painting, music, and dancing. Any similarities?
All of them.
All of them.
My mum and dad, I don't know if she knew this, my mum and dad were champion ballroom dancers. So
really?
From the age of 3 I was dancing.
Right.
Obviously, with dancing, there's music involved, but growing up, I was listening to Motown, Ray Charles.
Wow, that's what she's. So just say music and I put especially Motown.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't say that bit to you, but drawing and painting, music, especially Motown, dance.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting, isn't it? Can you see how some of these things can just, yeah.
Yeah, I that is really like the drawing music and dancing, and then the Motown. But then at the back of my mind as well, I'm thinking, well, it was a perfect family for me to be adopted into.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Going dancing and listening to that kind of music.
Yeah, and I guess there would be things like that would have been available to her at the time, and and it is nice to know that that if something like that worked out, it is something you might have grown up with in your birth family, and it also gives you a better chance to if there are things in common, then maybe it gives you a better chance if you do ever get round to meeting at some point that you will have interests in common as well, even though your mum and dad who brought you up will always be your mum and dad, but you can sometimes readjust things a little bit and find a place if that seems like the right thing to do for your birth family. Can find a place within your life if that's something that is possible for both of you, and that's the big bit that we don't know as we read through this, and that you don't need to know right now. That's for a little bit further down the line, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I won't go into great detail, but her parents' names and details are given. Sadly, her dad died of a heart attack the day after her wedding to her ex-husband.
Oh God,
which is awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds as if she was very close to her family, and they were very supportive of her. She had 2 brothers and 1 sister, so we don't know their names, but there's a little bit of information about them that you can read for yourself. But they were, I think they were supporting her bringing Emma up, and they supported any decision they made. So it wasn't that they said, "Oh my goodness, you've got pregnant and you must." You must do such and such. That's absolutely not how it was for Susan. She came from a nice family who were concerned about her, really, because of the position that she was already in, and and it does say in the record that Susan knew it would be painful to go through with her plans for adoption, but she was sure that it was in your best interest, and that's why she reached the decision. But she didn't feel able to meet your adoptive parents, because that's like the real reality of it, isn't it? That these people are going to be able to do what she's not able to do, and it can make you feel like you've failed or let down your child, or whatever.
Yeah, I can understand
that. And I think you're a good age to understand that. You're not too young, you're not too old. You don't need to feel any pressure, because assuming she's still alive, we've got no reason to believe she wouldn't be. She's not old. She's younger than I am, that way. And hopefully, I mean, obviously, people can die at any age, but hopefully there would be time in your side for you to make decisions about whether you want to do anything else, and so we can always talk about that at a later stage if you want to. So, but I think you're at a nice age where I think you mature yourself, but you're probably still quite open thinking, I suppose, and making a sensible decision as we go along.
Yeah.
So I'll just mention a little bit. I mean, I've got to say, I did laugh. I don't know if this is right. I did laugh at some of the things she said about your birth father, Philip, and I'll include what's called the Form E, because I also give you some of the original documents. I think I said that to you. Now, the Form E is the one that your birth mother would have sat with somebody like me and filled out all the detail. So the summary that I'm giving you, where I put the bit about your birth father on it. Most of it comes from there, but and that would have been her, and somebody just wrote down what she actually said. And I mean, and I'll tell you, the reason I laughed was, I mean, she described him as having very broad shoulders, nicely brown hair, streaked fair, brown eyes, sallow skin, very fit. The bit I laughed was very easygoing, extremely so, immature, typical playboy, doesn't stick to anything, hard worker but tires of his job, itchy feet, not the settling down type, a charmer with a twinkle in his eye.
Oh,
I know, and I actually wrote all of that down because I actually thought that shows a real affection.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, even though she thought it was, you know, and I mean, and also she went on, it was always, he had a very different, he started off as a jeweler, then he was working with his dad as a patron decorator, and then a managerial job, then working with his uncle selling carpets, also in a pub and on the papers. And again, I love this, according to Susan, he always holds down a job, always variety, never boring. So I thought that was, and you might see, again, you might resonate some of that with yourself, but it's actually, you know, I think it's quite affectionate, and I think as an adopted person, that's quite heartening, you know.
Yeah, and I think it shows that there was no bad feelings, and she wanted to show him in the best light that she possibly could.
Yeah, because I think she genuinely, and I mean, the thing I think, and again, we don't know, and we may find out at some point, but, you know, they were friends, and certainly in the short term, the friendship probably didn't happen, and he may never know why.
Yeah.
He may never know why his friend stopped being his friend, and maybe that didn't, you know, who knows what happened, but, you know, she does talk of him in a very nice way. They lived near each other, they both lived in Burnage area of Manchester, and he played football, training and swimming. His vice was that he smoked, according to her. So, I know. So, I mean, it's quite, from that point of view, it's quite a nice read for you, I think. I think you'll quite enjoy reading the detail for yourself and filling in. Well, I mean, as I say, the story that you already had was pretty much right, but it will just give you a broader idea of the kind of people that are your birth parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you got any immediate questions right now?
Not that I can think of at the minute. I've been scribbling down notes as you've been telling me.
Right.
And I'm just looking at them smiling.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, and I can't wait to. Not that I want to get you off the phone, but I can't wait to tell people and.
Yeah, I know. And do you know what? That's where I think it's quite nice in some ways. We have the conversations. All I'm doing is giving you. If we were actually together, I would let you read it all, and we would ask it, and we'd take time. But all I'm trying to do is give you a bit of a flavour, and it's partly just to reassure you. Look, this is all fine. You know, it's actually quite a nice story. There's some sadness because of her losing her dad, her divorce, the fact that what was clearly a very good pal maybe didn't ever continue that friendship. You know, so there's things there. There's obviously Emma, what happened to her? Did she marry again? So you will find yourself, as well as reading the story, the circumstances and relating all of that, I think you probably would be able to help yourself also thinking, well, what happened next?
Yeah.
You know, and where's Emma now? The one thing I would say is, please don't rush in to do, you know, even if you're tempted to do social media or do anything like that, please don't do anything rash, will you, Rachel?
No.
In terms of, you know, because it can be so easy to find people, and it can be so easy to, you know, to make a contact in the heat of the moment. But all I would say is, anything you do, try to put both feet firmly on the ground, and, you know, and make some well thought out decisions and not reactive ones, you know.
And I think if it ever came to the point where I thought that I would want to make contact, I would have to have this conversation with my sister especially,
Yes.
Because my mum and dad biologically had a child after me,
Right.
and she's my best friend. So
Yeah.
before I chose to do, I know she'd understand, and she'd want to come with me to meet, and she'd want to be completely involved, but I'd have to have that conversation, and I think it'd be
I understand.
I think harder on me than what it would on her.
Yeah, that's a cut. Don't you think? Because particularly, yeah, and you've got a sister, and then you've got a birth sister, and it's actually having the conversation beforehand, because where your sister will have grown up knowing who she looked like because her parents were physically resembled. So the two things you don't have being brought up as an adopted person is the physical resemblance and the medical history. But if you were to possibly at some point engage with your birth sister, then you may look identical, and that can be hard. And it does bring out, I might have said this to you before, but it does bring out some of the playground emotions, and people go, oh, wait a minute, this is my sister, not your sister.
Yeah.
And people can find it threatening. So I think you're very wise to have these kind of conversations, put them on the table, have the conversations, have a laugh about them, whatever you need to do, but prepare yourselves for it, Rachel.
Yeah.
The more you talk to the people that mean the most to you and prepare yourself, the better chance you've got of making it all work out, because there's no doubt it is complicated,
Yeah.
And you are like a curious mix of birth, adoptive family, whatever you might have been anyway. There are obvious things like medical and resemblance that come from your birth family, but it can be more complex than that. Even just things like the music, the dance, or other things that might just jump out. So I haven't picked out the gist of what I've written in your records there, but some of the things that might hit a nerve with you might be ones that I've not, that doesn't even look particularly significant, but it's all when you look at it as a whole, it can just take you somewhere.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And I think you're wise to, I would definitely be considerate of your sister's feeling and involve her. And that doesn't mean that you've got to only do what somebody else tells you can do, but at least you do it in a way where you've carefully thought out what you're doing and agreeing how you're going to move forward, so that nobody, or this sort of thing, if you did decide you wanted to trace particularly, it can cause some upset, but you can minimise that by doing it as carefully as possible. And I'd be very happy to talk to you about anything. The way I work, Rachel, is if you've got a question, it's not daft. No matter what the question is, if it's a question for you, then it's not daft, and we can, I'm happy to answer anything, or just for chat, or be used as a sounding board, or whatever it might be as we move forward.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, look, obviously, the slight problem I've got with this is, obviously, if we were meeting face-to-face, I would be handing you everything now, this little pack of stuff. I'm happy to send it to you tomorrow. I've obviously got copies of things, but nothing has ever gone missing before.
Yeah.
It's the first time for everything. So there is almost that risk if we, in doing that. But are you happy to take that risk?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Because I've got, as well as the summary that we've just talked around, I've got your birth mother's referral to Catholic Rescue, the Form E, which is something I told you, where somebody like me would have sat and just filled in all the relevant bits. There's your neonatal report, your long and short birth certificates, certificate of baptism.
Wow.
The memorandum that your birth mum signed when you're adopted. That's where, again, somebody like me would explain the finality, really, where your mum and dad legally became your parents. So you have to sign to say that has been explained to you. And we've also got a medical report and some letters to your birth mother and your adoption order.
Oh, that's lovely. Because so I have a photograph as well, because I want to make, I remember like my mum and dad making me a little bit of a book to tell me, but I want to make one as an adult, and actually got a photograph of the outfit that my mum bought me when she took me to court, when it all got finalised.
Nice. Yeah,
and that was in December of '88. So I've got that, so I can like kind of put it in some sort of chronological order.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've got everything that I put in your folder is in chronological order as well. Including like the letters. So like your birth mum Susan's been informed when the adoption went through, and she's been told that you were happily settled with your mum and dad and everything. So I think she was. It was actually a colleague of mine who I used to work with. She actually sadly died in early 2004 or 5, I think it was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Elaine Stanaway, she was absolutely lovely. She was Susan's social worker, and she was actually adopted mum herself.
Ah.
So I think that's where she came. So she actually worked very, very closely with with birth parents in particular, but also with adoptive parents, because she had a lot of respect for birth mums and supported them, but she also totally understood adoptive parents and their experience, because she was the same.
Yeah. Lorraine, I've actually thought of a question.
Go on.
When I was 18, I got a letter to say that to ask me if I wanted to contact my birth family, and they said that if I didn't write in, I wouldn't know if she wrote in or not.
Right.
If I wrote in and she didn't write in, we wouldn't make contact. Is there anything in there to say that she did or didn't contact?
No, as far as I'm aware, we've had no contact from her, Rachel.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean anything in my experience, because a lot of people, you kind of live parallel lives, and you know about her and she knows about you, and people quite often don't want to upset other people's apple cart, and that's the only reason they don't. A lot of birth mothers say they made that choice and they would not come and interfere with your life.
Yeah.
And so they would rather wait to be contacted. Other people have had to, it's so painful, they put the whole experience into a little box that they can't open because it's too painful. So if you were to contact, it would be a negative response. What I would say is, that letter you're describing is called an 18 letter, which is something we after your adoption time, it became a new bit of legislation where local authorities and adoptive agencies like Catholic Rescue were obliged by law to write to people on or around their 18th birthday to ensure, because you might have heard, we've got people now, we've got somebody that's like the same age as me who discovered he was adopted when he was 59.
Oh, wow.
And part of the legislation was about adoptive parents needing to know that wasn't right, that you couldn't do that to people in terms of identity. And you can imagine, particularly in the 60s, it was all done very hushed up, very secret. Adoptive parents would just say, you go away and just act as if this child's your own, and it almost gave people free rein not to tell if they chose not to. But then that can cause, it's not the fact you're adopted that then becomes the problem, it's the fact that nobody told you you were adopted that can become the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what we've seen happening. So basically they actually enshrined that in law shortly after you were adopted. Actually, I think it was the 1989 Adoption Act, and what meant therefore was that agencies had to write to you. Now, you don't write to the birth family or try to contact them at any time, but what we do have is a contact register where you could have your name on so that she got in touch. That's where the bit about it would have to be both of you. So your details, we could say to you, you keep your name and address on file and update it with us, and then obviously if we have a contact from your birth mother, we can put you in contact with each other. Now things actually moved on again though after that, whereby we actually started, where it used to be under more secrecy, we actively started offering intermediary services to birth families and to adopted people to actually seek them out, check the marriage, by using birth, marriage and death registers and all of that kind of thing, the electoral roll, and actually actively sending trace letters and acting as an intermediary for people. But that actually only became possible. We used to, it's probably around the time you were 18, have to go to like a committee to set out a case as to why we thought it would be okay to contact a birth mother or contact an adopted adult. And if the committee didn't agree, we couldn't do it. But now it is, as things have become more and more open over the years, really over the last 15 years in particular, then it's a very established practice now to send trace letters. So we do a lot of trying to find people and putting them in touch and exchanging letters. And we can do, I mean, COVID aside, because that's obviously good timing at the moment, arguably in terms of contacting your birth mother, this I probably would say wait a little bit, because even if she wanted contact, the most you'd be able to do is write letters and things. You wouldn't be able to meet even if both of you wanted to. So if any thinking you're doing around that, I would factor that in as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Just because, I mean, I've got a few people just now where contact had already started, and then they ended up going into just like direct email contact, which is fine, but then you're in limbo, because where do you take it from there? You can't meet your family and friends that you live with, and you can the ones you live with, but most of our social lives are dead in the water.
I know. I haven't seen my nieces in months.
Your nieces what, sorry?
I haven't seen them in months.
No, I've not. I mean, I normally go to Scotland regularly. I've not been to Scotland since February, and I don't know when I will go back, and I think we're all kind of in that position right now, and it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you would need to I would certainly take that into consideration, because it decide, and step at a time, we go right back to you getting your records, and I will send them recorded delivery tomorrow, but it's almost taking the time you need to absorb. Get in touch with me as and when you want to. I won't put any pressure on you. I'll leave it to you to contact me. But if a bit of time passes, I might just drop you an email and say, are you okay? Can I do anything? But in terms of any further steps, by all means, I think we would have another conversation, but then we would definitely need to take the whole COVID thing in, because you need to, what I would say is, see yourself through to the end where you think it might want to go, but also be prepared for it taking a left or a right turn, or going nowhere, or going very clear, and just take the COVID thing into consideration to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can end up just being in limbo, and that's not necessarily a good place to be.
Yeah, that is perfect.
Okay.
Oh.
So does that all make reasonable sense?
It's amazing. Thank you so much, and the information, the snippets of information that you've given me today has just excited me more about getting them in the post.
That's good.
I'll probably sit here on a FaceTime call with my friends and my wife, and go through it and have a laugh about it. Like you said, you had a giggle, so.
I do, and I think that's quite, and I don't always say that, but I just thought she had his measure, and it's possibly because he was such a good friend.
Yeah.
That she had his measure, but I just think that affection is so important, because let's be honest here, people find out they've been born in not very pleasant circumstances sometimes, and that certainly wasn't the case for you. And I think, not that any of us can change whatever the circumstances are of our birth, but personally, I think it's quite heartening when you can see that he wasn't interviewed, but you can see that she had a real affection for him just by the way she described him. And I think if that makes you laugh a bit, that's actually quite good.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait. I honestly can't wait. And thank you so much for your help.
You're more than welcome, Rachel. So I'll put them in the post. I would like it I will put in like an acknowledgement document just for you to sign, so that I've got a record that you've got the documents and things. But anything at all, I'm on holiday for a week from next Wednesday, so just the last couple of days of October and the beginning of November I'm on holiday, but other than that I'm around, so please feel free to either ring or email or whatever, and we'll just see where things go. But there's no, I always say in this work that I do, there's no blue light. We take as long as it needs, and it doesn't matter if it's months or years or whatever. We just and everybody is, it's all very cheesy social work, but since I've done this job, I would really say that everybody's situation is unique, even though there are broad similarities. So we just go with, I don't tell you what to do, I respond to what you think do, and I will try to use the experience I've got to help you to make informed decisions about whatever you decide to do. But it's not a case of you're on this roller coaster ride and you can't get off until you've passed all posts. I'm like this. I am not telling you what to do or leading you in it.
No, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and I'll get that sent to you tomorrow. Hopefully you'll get what day tomorrow, Wednesday. You should get it Thursday, maybe Friday.
Brilliant. I can't wait.
Okay?
Thank you so much again.
Lovely to speak to you, Rachel, and hopefully we'll meet one day.
Oh, hopefully.
Okay.
You take care.
Take care then.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
The police come and they